let's talk about this idea, the single source of aberration. In Scientology, one word we commonly use to sum up irrationality is aberration, defined in the Tech Dictionary as wrong conduct or conduct not supported by reason. Aberration is opposed to sanity, which would be its opposite. Going back to the Dianetics book, it is primarily an explanation of what has been discovered to be the single source of aberration. The very mechanism that causes us to react to one situation as though it were another, to react to one person as though they were another. This is identification. And the Dianetics book is a manual for how to remove and eliminate this mental infiltration that confuses what we perceive as reality with impressions of old incidents from our past. This is a technology of how to straighten out the primary reason why we all suffer from a varying tendency to react inappropriately to life situations and do things we cannot explain and later wish we hadn't. The mechanism that often enough manifests itself every time you observe someone inexplicably say or do something you can clearly see isn't sensible. The mechanism that throws our consciousness under the bus of a past incident is termed the reactive mind, or bank, and that recording of the past incident that is playing through our consciousness is termed an engram. Let's understand the engram. Again, referring to the Tech Dictionary, the engram is a mental image picture which is a recording of a time of physical pain and unconsciousness. A complete recording down to the last accurate detail of every perception present in a moment of partial or full unconsciousness. The word engram is an old one borrowed from biology. It means simply a lasting memory trace on a cell. It may be engraved on more than the cell, but up against the Dianetic processing, it is not very lasting. A moment when the analytical mind is shut down by physical pain, drugs, or other means, and the reactive bank is open to the receipt of a recording. We're talking about a recording here. Simply moments of physical pain strong enough to throw part or all of the analytical machinery out of circuit. You could say that the mind has a circuit breaker in it, and when we're experiencing something that is too painful to experience, the switch gets thrown, and the recording goes into the reactive mind in the form of an engram. Not a sentient recording containing meanings. It is merely a series of impressions, such as a needle might make on wax. These impressions are meaningless to the body until the engram keys in, at which time aberrations and psychosomatics occur. A painful experience trips the mechanism that we call the reactive mind, just like a heavy electrical current trips a circuit breaker. The reactive mind diverts the pain from one's surface consciousness, just like the circuit breaker diverts the current from damaging an electrical system. The painful experience is converted from fully perceived and understood experiential information to an encapsulated recording, or engram, in the reactive mind, which contains a bank of these engrams. There are at least 4 major liabilities in this mental circuit breaker system. Firstly, we're denied full perception and understanding of the life experience, thus quarantined and encapsulated. Secondly, an actual portion of your ability to reason, which we call your intelligence quotient, your IQ, is captured within the encapsulated recording, and with it a portion of your ability to clearly and vividly perceive or take in your environment, which we refer to as quantifiable attention units. Third, we're subject to unknowingly re-experiencing all the undesirable emotional and physical feelings in these recordings of painful experiences. And fourth, we're subject to unknowingly misidentifying the people, things, and environment around us here and now with those in the triggered engrams, and thus acting inappropriately to what is actually there, without knowing or understanding what we are doing. Identification, thinking in identities, misidentifying one thing or person as being another. The complete inability to differentiate. The very bottom of the scale of sanity, in other words, total insanity. This again is triggered engrams, the closing of a mental switch from conscious observation of one's actual present-time environment to hypnotically reliving a past experience, superimposing it over what is actually happening now. In Dianetics, the word we use for this phenomenon is restimulation, and it can occur to greater or lesser degrees. Restimulation is not random, it has causes. As with allergies, restimulation is triggered by something present in the environment. The reactive mind containing the engram bank functions simplistically, in fact, oversimplistically. For here is the very seat of irrational or insane thinking, misidentifying present-time experience as one of the many, many painful past experiences, engrams, contained within this reactive mind. It is a mechanism that functions automatically and primitively to cause the individual to react as though the experience of the triggered engram is happening now. Because it can take anything present here and now that is at all similar to any element within the experience of the engram, as a signal that the engramic experience is happening right now. A train whistle, the feeling of hot sun on one's skin, a musical passage, a repeated phrase, a similar voice, a million things. An engram is a special type of what we call in Dianetics a facsimile. The definition of facsimile. Any mental image picture. All physical perceptions, all effort, emotion, and thought are recorded continuously. And these recordings are called facsimiles. A part of a three-dimensional color picture with sound and smell and all other perceptions, plus the conclusions or speculations of the individual. Restimulation is defined as the reactivation of an existing incident, where the environment reactivates a facsimile. Here is the person inexplicably blowing up at someone over a perfectly innocent comment, inexplicably feeling scared or nervous, or spooked in certain places. The individual who is sweet and understanding except when in a supermarket or behind their desk or in their car, where the particular surroundings affect an acute change in attitude and mannerisms. The lighting, the sound or view of equipment running, the cubicle walls and desk, the background voices, the smells of chemicals in the factory or the ventilation, the color of the walls and floors, the ceilings, you get the idea. Virtually anything that can be perceived can be the common element to some painful experience. Encapsulated in the reactive mind is an engram, and thus be the restimulator that will trigger the reactivation of that experience in one's mind, below conscious awareness, putting one right back in the earlier incident. People present here and now become the threatening, intimidating, or irritating, or frightening people in the actual original incident. The person can gasp for air, re-experiencing a smoke-filled room from long ago, or being held underwater in a swimming pool. All they know is suddenly they are overwhelmed with a strong, uncomfortable attitude toward their surroundings. And they will make irrational claims about the people and things around them. Here is the essence of insanity. Thinking in identities, mistaking what is happening here now for what was happening somewhere earlier. Having the two different experiences become, in one's mind, identical. Now again from the technical dictionary. That is how the reactive mind operates. It gets a whiff of something similar to where and when something bad happened. And it automatically goes into full defensive alert mode, reactivating the state of mind the person experienced in the incident, without any recognition of present time. The reactive mind is the basis of identification, level or stimulus response thought. The reactive mind is the basis of insanity. Thus, the reactive mind is the source of the lowest level of thought, pure stimulus response. Inability to distinguish the circumstances of now from some dangerous past experience. This is the basis of insanity. Okay, well, let's talk about now how to restore sanity. In Dianetics, the Modern Science of Mental Health, Ron Hubbard lists out the 4 valid therapies for the influence of the reactive mind as change of environment, education, physical treatment, and the optimum solution of clearing out the reactive mind. We'll talk about a couple of these here and now. First of all, change of environment. Basically, this breaks down into 2 methods. Removing restimulative elements from the surroundings, analogous to finding a new home for a pet that one has allergic reactions to, and relocating oneself. Moving a person, quote, out of the environment in which he is unhappy or ineffective can bring about some astonishing, swift recoveries. This is valid therapy. It removes the restimulators from the individual or takes the individual away from the restimulators. It is ordinarily quite hit or miss, and more miss than hit, and it will not remove all the restimulators by 9/10, since the individual carries the bulk of these around with him or is compelled to contact them. So we can see change of environment will likely, to some degree, be helpful, but it is generally far from a cure-all. It's sort of a band-aid. Number 2, education. New data or enthusiasms may very well key out engrams. Now, when we say the phrase key out, let me define that from the Tech Dictionary. Key out, release or separation from one's reactive mind or some portion of it. Okay, now to go back to that idea. New data or enthusiasms may very well key out engrams by overbalancing the reactive mind in the light of new analytical surge. If a man can simply be convinced that he has been fighting shadows, or if he can be persuaded to hang his fears on some indicated cause, whether that cause is true or not, he can be benefited. Sometimes he can be educated into a strong faith in some deity or cult, which will cause him to feel so invulnerable that he rises above his engrams. Raising his survival potential in any way will raise his general tone to a point where it is no longer on a par with the reactive bank. Giving him an education in engineering or music where he can receive a higher level of respect will often defend him from his restimulators. A rise in position of esteem is actually a change of environment, but it is also educational, since he is now taught he's valuable. If a man can be made busy at a hobby or work by personal or exterior education that is good for him, another mechanism comes into being. The analytical mind becomes so engrossed that it takes to itself more and more energy for its activity and begins to align with a new purpose. By the analytical mind, we mean, and again from the Tech Dictionary, that mind which combines perceptions of the immediate environment, of the past via mental images, and estimations of the future into conclusions which are based on the realities of situations. Basically, this subject of education as valid therapy makes the point that you can decrease your insanity, and increase your sanity. Let's try to increase the sanity. That's probably a better idea. Anyway, you can increase the sanity by beefing up your levels of knowledge, confidence, and enthusiasm for life to make yourself less susceptible to the stimulation of reactive mind content. Doing any worthwhile activity will have this effect for as long as it is continued. We all need such activity to have a good life. Now, in my next talk, we'll talk about the other two valid therapies, physical treatment and clearing out the material of the reactive mind. Thank you, and I hope you enjoyed this.